Yashodanandana Brajayanarandana Yamunatira Banachari Yamunatira Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, English Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Samaveta Bhaktivedanta ki jai. All glories to the Samu devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Gyantamirandasya Gyanandana Shalakaya Chakshuran Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Śrīmad Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vidai Mahaprema Pura Vibhurim Rakshati Yadamusha Purusha Mungte Ganan Sudasa Sudasat Makalam Krishishtamagaman Vachamsi Me Hare Krishna. Text 19. Okay, so we're reading from the 4th canto of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, chapter 2. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nishidyamana sasadasya mukhaye. Nishidyamana sasadasya mukhaye. Daksho giritraya visrijya shapam. Daksho giritraya visrijya shapam. Tasmat vinishkramya vibhritamanyur. Tasmat vinishkramya vibhritamanyur. Jagama kauragya nijam niketanam. Jagamya kaurabhya nijam niketanam. Nishidyamana sasadasya mukhe. Daksho giritray visrija shapam. Tasmat vinishkramya vibhritamanyur. Jagama karavya nijam niketanam. ladies. Daksha Nishidhyamana, being requested not to. Saha, he, Daksha, Sadasya Mukhya, by the members of the sacrifice. Dakshaha, Daksha, Giritraya, to Shiva, Visrijya, giving, Shapam, a curse, Tasmat, from that place, Vinishkramya, going out, Vibridhamanyu, being exceedingly angry, Jagama, went, Kauravya, or Vidura, Nijam, to his own, Niketanam, home. Translation purport by His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, in spite of the requests of all the members of the sacrificial assembly, Daksha in great anger cursed Lord Shiva and then left the assembly and went back to his home. Purport. Anger is so detrimental that even a great personality like Daksha, out of anger, left the arena where Brahma was presiding, and all the great sages and pious and saintly persons were assembled. All of them requested him not to leave, but infuriated he left, thinking that the auspicious place was not fit for him. Puffed up by his exalted position, he thought that no one was greater than he in argument. That is the effect of cruel anger. In Bhagavad Gita, therefore, it is advised that one who desires to make tangible advancement in spiritual consciousness must avoid three things: lust, anger, and greed, and the mode of passion. Actually, we can see that lust, anger, and passion make a man crazy, even though he be as great as Daksha. The very name Daksha suggests that he was expert in all material activities, but still, because of his aversion towards such a saintly personality as Shiva, he was attacked by these three enemies: anger, lust, and passion. Lord Chaitanya therefore advised that one be very careful not to offend Vaishnavas. He compared offenses toward the Vaishnava to a mad elephant, as a mad elephant can do anything horrible. So when a person offends a Vaishnava, he can perform any abominable action. Nishidhyamana sasadasya mukhyair daksho giritraya visrijya shapam tasmat nishkramya vivritam manyur jagama koravya nichamni ketanam. Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, in spite of the requests of all the members of the sacrificial assembly, Daksha in great anger cursed Lord Shiva and then left the assembly and went back to his home. This is one of the stories in Bhagavatam which describes Vaishnava aparat and the results of the Vaishnava aparat. In this case, Daksha offending Lord Shiva, and as a result, we understand that his sacrifice was destroyed and his associates were destroyed, and he himself lost his own head, right? Which is a kind of karmic reaction, right? One who is losing his head in a subtle way is risking to lose his head in a gross way also, right? And so this is not the only story. We can see so many stories in Bhagavatam which describe the offenses against the devotees and the results of those offenses. Anyone remembers any other stories from Bhagavatam? Huh? Yudhishthir? Ambarish Maharaj, yes. Offended by Durvasa Muni. Any other stories? Did he offend Lord Shiva? Yes, became demon. Okay. Any other stories? Pandavas. Yes. Prahlad Maharaj. Yes. So many stories. Practically every canto of Bhagavatam has at least one story, right? Concerning Vaishnava Aparadhas, because Vaishnava Aparadhas are so common, right? And that's why this is the first and foremost offense of the holy name. Offending Vaishnavas. And sometimes people think that this Vaishnava means great Vaishnava, right? And one time, when one devotee was explaining about the 10 offenses of the holy name in the presence of Srila Prabhupada, and he said the first offense to offend a devotee who is dedicated to spreading the glories of the holy name. And then he said, great devotee such as Srila Prabhupada, if we offend him, then the results can be very dangerous. But Srila Prabhupada stopped him and he said, no, actually he said spiritual master. If we offend spiritual master, then the effects can be very detrimental. But Srila Prabhupada stopped him and he said, why only spiritual master? Any Vaishnava. If you offend any Vaishnava, then your spiritual life can be ruined. And of course the effects of the offenses towards great Vaishnavas are great. You can lose your head, you can turn into demon. So many things can happen. You can be torn apart, like Hiranyakashipu, right? They tore him apart. But the results of the offenses against devotees who are not in such a powerful position, of course, could be less. But nevertheless, do we want to experience the consequences of those offenses? Because the results will be there, and actually this is the most dangerous thing in Krishna consciousness. That's why Narottam Das Thakur says in his song that if someone offends the Supreme Lord, then he can become free from the offense by chanting the holy name. But if someone offends a Vaishnava, then there is no remedy. One cannot escape the results. And actually, the worst result for us in terms of offending Vaishnavas is losing taste for Krishna consciousness, right? And leaving the association of devotees. And of course, once we leave the association of devotees, then all the troubles begin. Because as long as we are in the association of devotees, then we are protected, right? It is like when Sita requested Lord Ramachandra when they were in the forest to go and catch a golden deer, who of course was a demon, but anyway Sita was attracted and Lord Rama couldn't say no. So he had to go, but then he told Lakshman that he should protect Sita. And then when Lakshman was sent out by Sita by force to go and help Ram, who apparently required help, but which was actually a trick of the demon, then Lakshman said, I'll have to go, but I'll make a circle around you, magic circle. And as long as you're within the circle, you are protected, right? But once you step out of the circle, then you have no protection. Please stay in the circle, no matter what happens. And then, of course, Ravan came and he pretended to be a sadhu who was collecting alms, and his goal was to steal Sita, but he couldn't penetrate the circle. And then he pretended that he wanted Sita to give him some alms, and he allured Sita. But Lakshman is actually a spiritual master, right? Because Lakshman is the same Balaram, right? And only because Lakshman had to experience so much trouble being junior brother of Lord Ramachandra, he said, no way, next time I'm going to be a senior brother. So that he would not be able to manipulate me so easily. So he came as Lord Balaram, but we can understand that Lakshman and Balaram, that's the same tattva. So Lakshman is guru, right? And so he told Sita Devi to stay within the circle. So that's the instruction of the guru, right? And stepping outside of the circle is breaking guru's order. And so actually spiritual master gives us so many instructions, right? But spiritual master understands very important thing, that the principle of the advancement in Kali Yuga is only one. Sankirtan means congregational glorification of the Supreme Lord. And of course, to have congregational glorification, you have to be in the circle of sadhu sangha, right? Because how can you glorify the Lord congregationally if you are alone and away from the devotees? Because in Kali Yuga, unfortunately, we don't have so much spiritual strength. In Kali Yuga, people have so many problems, right? Prayena alpa, ayusha sabya, kalavasmin yugejana, mandasumanda matayo, mandamagya hyupadruta. That people in Kali Yuga, they have very short lifespan, right? And they are very slow, and that's why they are always disturbed. And so, actually, given the nature of Kali Yuga, practically speaking, there is no chance that anyone can advance spiritually on one's own, right? And that's why, as Prabhupada was saying, strength is in numbers, right? And actually, apparently, this is what Mahabharata also says. And So that's why we have to be in the association of devotees. And spiritual master gives you so many instructions, but actually, practically all these instructions are meant just for one thing, to keep us in the devotee association, right? In so many different ways, make sure that Maya is like Ravana, right? And she wants to pull you out, but there are so many devotees around you, and they tell Maya, get out, get lost, right? So Maya cannot reach you because you are protected by the circle of sadhu sangha. But once you step out of the circle, that's it, right? Maya can easily catch you. And so what's the trick? But Maya can also influence us on a very subtle level. Maya is not just outside, Maya is also inside. And so what's the first and foremost thing? What's the greatest and most dangerous trick Maya is using against the devotees? That is, Maya says, look at yourself. You are so smart. You are so advanced spiritually. You are so noble. You are such an exalted personality, right? Just look at yourself in the mirror. Have you seen anyone better than you? And now, just look around. You know, these so-called devotees who surround you. And look at all their faults. Look at the shape of the nose of this one, right? And look at that one, you know, how he's wearing his dhoti. And look at this one, how he's chanting his rounds, etc., you know. And then Maya says, you know, what such a... They just impeding your spiritual advancement. Without them, you would become, you know, like very exalted personality very soon. So that's why, you know, they do not deserve the great fortune of having your association. Right? And so, if someone has this kind of mentality, I am great and everyone else is, you know, Kali Yuga product, but I'm the only one from Satya Yuga. Right? Like Lord Balaram, he was from Satya Yuga, as 9th canto described. He was very high, very tall. And so, oh no, sorry, not Lord Balaram. One king, Revata? Yeah, King Revata. He was looking for a match for his daughter, but he couldn't find anyone. You know, he was very choosy, this king, and apparently quite powerful spiritually. So he went all the way to Brahmaloka to ask Lord Brahma if he could find him the match, if he could find the match for his daughter. But apparently, you know, by the time they completed, you know, they got the opportunity to see Lord Brahma said, you know what, on the Earth planet, you know, while we were staying here for a few minutes on the Earth planet, many millenniums have passed. And so not only all the kings you ever knew are dead, but even their descendants, their, you know, sons and grandsons and everyone, they're all dead. And so basically, if you looking for your contemporaries, you have no contemporaries. But then King Revata was asking, so what to do? And then Lord Brahma said, well, actually, it's Dvapara Yuga on the Earth planet, and there is Krishna and Balaram are on the Earth, and since you're a bit ambitious, so to find the best groom, then Lord Balaram should be the husband of your daughter. And King Revata followed that. But when they came back to the earth, because they were from Satya Yuga, and so his daughter was so big, it's like huge girl. And in Dvapara Yuga, everyone was so small in comparison to her. And so when king came to Lord Balaram and he said, can you marry my daughter? Balaram said, okay, but we should adjust her size. Took his plow, put it on her shoulder and pulled her down, right? And then she became of the appropriate size. So, but, in one sense, we may feel ourselves like, from Satya Yuga, we are real giants, and everybody else comparing to us is, like a real dwarf, right? And they're pulling us down spiritually, right? Obstructing our spiritual progress, because these devotees have so many faults. And it's easy, in Kali Yuga, to find a fault is not a big deal, right? In someone. Especially if you want it, right? Shishupala found 100 faults in Krishna in few minutes, right? So it's like, if you have a desire, this desire is very easy to fulfill. And so then if someone has this kind of attitude, I'm the greatest and everyone else is nothing comparing to me, then one can be very easily disturbed by the apparent faults, right? And what the Daksha was disturbed with. Why the Daksha became angry? Just because Lord Shiva didn't stand up for him, right? And we understand that Lord Shiva is practically non-different from the Supreme Lord, right? Brahma Samhita explains that Lord Shiva is one with the Supreme Lord, but he is different at the same time, achintya bheda bheda tattva. So the example is given milk and yogurt. So because the Supreme Lord is transcendental, he is compared to milk, but because Lord Shiva comes in touch with the material nature, he is compared to yogurt. But otherwise there is no difference between Lord Shiva and the Supreme Lord, and actually, according to same Brahma Samhita, he is the manifestation of the Supreme Lord. When the Supreme Lord glances at the material energy as Mahavishnu, we know that Mahavishnu is impregnating material world just by his glance, right? And within this glance, there are all the living entities contained, right? And then together with the glance, all these living entities are entering into the material world, and so they start their conditioned activities. And this glance is personified, and it is, right? And so in that sense, sometimes some scriptures say that Lord Shiva is the father of all living entities, and it is true, right? And sometimes scriptures say that Lord Shiva is the Supreme Lord. And if you take the scale of the material world, it is true. There is no higher than Lord Shiva in here, right? Because he is the father. He brought all the living entities with him, right? So he is the father. But of course, if you take the greater scale, material and spiritual world, then it is Krishna, right? So that's why Vaishnavas see no contradiction. If scriptures describe Lord Shiva as the Supreme Lord, it is true on the scale of the material world. But when the scriptures describe Krishna as the Supreme Lord, it is true on the absolute scale, right? Achinte Bheda Bheda Tattva. So if we understand completely our Vaishnava philosophy, we will never see any contradiction, right? All the apparent contradictions, they are only because of the lack of knowledge or understanding. And so Lord Shiva, being the greatest of the personalities, in the assembly didn't have to stand up for Daksha, just a conditioned living entity, but because Daksha had the presiding position, he was like the master of the ceremony, right? And so he expected everyone to stand up for him. But Lord Shiva didn't do, not because he wanted to breach the etiquette, but just because he was absorbed in meditation. And so he didn't notice Daksha's entry. But Daksha became so angry, right? Can you imagine how much pride one should have if someone haven't stood up for you, right? And you're ready to kill that person, right? And so this is why Srila Prabhupada says pride leads to fall, right? And from pride come all other problems, lust, anger, greed. Srila Prabhupada, interestingly enough, when he's quoting this verse in the purport, and of course he's referring to text 21 in chapter 16, which says, Trividham narakasya dvaram nasham atmana kamakrodha tatalobhastasmata tatrayam tyajet. There are three gates leading to this hell, lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give this up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. And Srila Prabhupada says, the mode of passion is a junction. And human life is also a junction, right? That's why in human life you have the greatest choice. You can elevate yourself to the level of the demigods, or you can degrade yourself to the level of animals, right? Like animals cannot degrade themselves, right? They have certain karma and they act strictly within the bound, or certain conditioning, and they act within the boundaries of those conditioning, right? But we can see that human being, you know, it's like we have certain human beings in Kali Yuga, and comparing them to animals is the offense towards animals. Because some human beings, they degrade way below the level of animals. They do many things animals do not do, right? Even animals don't go that low. And so that's why human life provides huge freedom, you know, the biggest freedom of all the species residing on Earth, because we have most developed intelligence. Other living entities, they also have intelligence because they're also spirit souls, but their body limits them. The you know, capacity of their intelligence is limited. Like we went, we've been to one group in Israel. They're Jewish people, but they're very favorable to Krishna consciousness and to the devotees, and we've spoken to them, and they have one hobby. They keep parrots, and they train parrots to speak languages and do many other things. And these parrots, they are not kept in captivity. Actually, they are free to fly during the day anywhere they want, but for the night, for their food and shelter, they come back to their home, and they stay overnight, and then in the morning they can go out again. So no one locks the cage, right? It's open. And they trained parrots like that. You know, they voluntarily come back. Yeah, because it's easy. Food is there, and nice facility, safe place to stay overnight, etc. But they were showing how intelligent the parrots are. And one of them brought one parrot. I think it's like very big, bigger than cockatoo. I think it's Ara parrot, also white. And he said not only parrots speak, but they can understand the meaning of the words. It's not that they repeat just mechanically. No. They actually have intelligence, and he demonstrated. He said parrots can hold meaningful conversation. And he said, he told to the parrots, "Can you please introduce yourself? Tell your name." And parrot says, "My name is such and such. How old are you?" This is from few languages, so this parrot said, "I think I know 4 languages." Like that. And then he asked parrot another question, and then parrot said, "Can you give me a seed?" Because parrots, they eat seeds, like sunflower seeds. And the man said, "Well, first you answer the question, then I'll give you a seed." But the parrot said, "No, first you give me a seed, and then I'll answer the question." Actually, no, he said in a simple way. He said, "No, give me a seed." He said, "No, give me a seed." And then after he gave him sunflower seeds, then, parrot had his snack, and he continued the conversation. We were shocked. Our jaws dropped. Parrots are so intelligent. But he said, yes, they are intelligent, but their intelligence is up to the level of a 4-year-old child, which is quite high, right? But doesn't go beyond that. So, because, and of course, this thing alone easily disproves the foolish idea that animals have no soul, etc. Like animals have intelligence. They are living beings. And so, but still, their intelligence is very limited. But in human life, we have developed intelligence, right? And according to Voltaire, great writer and philosopher, what's the greatest manifestation of intelligence? It's a good thing to remember. He said the greatest manifestation of human intelligence is the ability to coexist with those who don't have it. So, but inability to coexist means lack of intelligence or dysfunctional intelligence, right? And when one becomes influenced by the modes, by the, by the by the impulses, right? If you're influenced by impulses, this is how it works. This is how consciousness is working. You're either functioning on intellectual platform, and you discriminate, because discrimination is the greatest function of intelligence. And so you discriminate, and you do the right thing, and you don't do the wrong thing, right? But when you're influenced by impulses, intelligence shuts down. And then we do many things we regret later, right? I mean, Daksha was regretful of his activities after he lost his head, but it was too late, right? And so prevention is better than cure, right? That's why you have Vaishnava philosophy, and then someone can give it a try. If someone doesn't believe in the philosophy, it's like I spoken to one devotee, and he said he lives in America, and very nice devotee, and I saw that he is missing a thumb on his right hand. So, I never asked what happened, but then he told himself. He said he had a quarrel with the devotee, and then, he came back home, and he's doing the handwork, right? He's a handyman. And he came back home, and he felt, that very heavy at heart. And with a heavy heart, he went and he was doing his work. And he said he was, there was a circular saw, right? And he was cutting the wood with the circular saw. And so he was holding the piece of wood with his hands and with his thumb. And so the hands were going towards the saw. And then he actually looked at his hand, and he realized, okay, I have to remove my thumb because it's going towards the circular saw. But he said at that moment, as if his hand was glued to the wood and he just couldn't remove it. He saw it, but he couldn't do anything, right? And then his thumb was cut. And only after that he could remove his hand. And his wife came, and, she was at home. And so they took the thumb, and she drove him to the next hospital, but they got stuck. There was a chance to stitch it back, to put it back and, fix it, but they got stuck in a traffic jam. And by the time they came to the hospital, it was too late, right? And so he lost his thumb. So, but actually this was very minor reaction, right? If someone offends Vaishnavas repeatedly, then next life will be hellish, right? So he will have to suffer so much more than just losing a thumb. But, if we're intelligent enough, we should ask ourselves the question, do I want to suffer because of the results of the offense of the Vaishnavas, and what do I gain if I offend the Vaishnavas, right? There is no gain, but losses are immense, right? And plus, Vaishnavas are dear to Krishna. All the living entities are dear to Krishna because they're his parts and parcel. But especially Vaishnavas. It's like Krishna explains in the 11th canto that all the living entities are very dear to me, but most dear living entities are those who are in human form of life, right? And out of those who are in human form of life, those who are civilized, those who are like in goodness, they are more dear to me, advanced. And out of those who actually serve me, these are the most dear to me, right? And so how can we please Krishna by offending those who are very dear to him, right? It's like Srila Prabhupada says, love me, love my dog, right? Even if we consider devotees not very perfect, right? But because they are devotees and because they are very dear to Krishna, we should love them, right? And actually, it's very interesting that the kind of faults, Kali Yuga is the ocean of faults, but not everybody's fault is disturbing us, right? For example, some terrorist killed so many innocent people and escaped. We do not become angry and we say, okay, I'll catch this guy, I'll kill him, right? We just read the news or hear the news, we say, okay, bad guy, but it doesn't really affect us emotionally, right? But if there is a Sunday feast and everybody gets 2 gulab jamuns, but then the devotee who serves the feast for some reason gives us only 1 gulab jamun, we think how these kind of demons can exist in this movement, right? So we can understand that the disturbances we feel, they are actually indicators of the problems we have to work on, right? And therefore, if someone serves as Krishna's instrument and exposes certain flaws in our consciousness, we should rather be thankful to that person, right? Because that person actually helps us to advance spiritually. It's like Bhaktivedanta Saraswati. He was giving a class and one man was always challenging him, right? And Bhaktivedanta Saraswati was peacefully answering his questions and pacifying him. But all the disciples hated that man, right? And they didn't wish him well at all. And that his man finally died, they celebrated that. And Bhaktivedanta Saraswati said, what is the festival about? I don't see any special day on the calendar. And they were saying, well, you're, that envious man who was always criticizing you, he actually died. And Bhaktivedanta Saraswati started crying. He said, it's so sad. He was my best friend because he was teaching me humility. Right? So this is how sincere Vaishnava responds to the disturbance. He sees that as Krishna's mercy. And that's why there is no anger or there is no, what to speak of, malice, etc. All these qualities exhibited by Daksha. And so, yesterday we were discussing with brahmacharis, how do you overcome the duality of happiness and distress? And so the Vaishnava solution is very, very simple. Be happy in distress and be very, alert when there is happiness. Because distress is Krishna's mercy, right? And happiness is the catch of Maya. So Vaishnava's perception is absolutely diametrically opposite to the material perception, right? That's why Vaishnavas are the only people who can be happy in the material world, which is full of misery, right? Because Vaishnavas perceive all the troubles as special mercy from Krishna, which is helping me to develop humility, patience, and dependence on Krishna, and what else? Reduce the bodily concept of life, and so many benefits, right? So sincere Vaishnava facing with difficulties, he's thinking, yes, good. It's Krishna's mercy, special mercy of Krishna upon me, right? Krishna is helping me to become a better devotee. Hare Krishna. All right, so we should stop here unless someone has any questions or comments? Yes, Prabhu. Can you please speak louder? I'm hard of hearing after so many years of loud kirtans.
I am very much thankful for your heart-touching lecture. One doubt is in my mind. The question is, I don't know whether it is appropriate or not. How to control this offensive attitude towards the Vaishnavas?
How to control offensive attitude towards Vaishnavas? Simple method, and this is something very practical. It says when one fingers point out at someone's fault, right? And we may not do it physically, but in our minds we may point out at someone's fault, right? Then 3 fingers are pointing back to us. And so, actually, disputing parties to find the common language, because unfortunately Kali Yuga is also influencing devotees sometimes, so sometimes they need help in resolving the differences. And so I found it to be very effective, and studied other methods of resolving, and of all the methods I came across, I found one which is the most simple and the most effective. And it is the method which everyone can apply in one's own life and easily resolve any differences one has with somebody else. And, because, okay, you may think, 3 fingers pointing back at me, so I have 3 times more reasons to look inside of myself and see what's wrong with me than, worry about somebody else's problems. But how do I look inside of myself? What do I do? And the most powerful way is to ask yourself lead questions. And so the 3 questions connected to these 3 fingers are very simple, but once you answer all these questions, you will make a great discovery which will really help you in your spiritual advancement. And first question is, how have I created this problem for myself? We don't want to ask ourselves this question, right? Because I think, no, he or she or they created problem for me, right? But actually it's me who contributed. Because in order to have a clap, you need 2 hands, right? So, okay, you are one, the other person is 1 hand, okay, because of him, the clap happened. But if you remove 1 hand, can you make a clap? No. It's like Srila Prabhupada was in a zoo. I'm not sure why did they went to the zoo. Probably some disciples took Prabhupada to the zoo. And of course, it's a very interesting place. In Kali Yuga, even animals are imprisoned, right? Zoo is animal prison, right? And so there was one lion's cub lying in the cage and very close to the bars and sleeping. And one brahmachari, young brahmachari, he wanted to pet that lion's cub, because the cubs are very attractive, like big cats. He was thinking, okay, this is like baby lion, I'll pet him, right? And then he approached that lion's cub, and animals are very sensitive. And so before he actually managed to touch him, that lion's cub, figured out what's going on, and he opened his eyes and he tried to hit that brahmachari with his paw. with his, nails. And this brahmachari jumped back. He was shocked. He didn't expect such a response. And then Prabhupada looked at him. He said, "Oh, after all, this is wild animal." So we can understand, if that brahmachari would be injured by the lion's cub, is it the fault of the lion's cub? In one sense, you can say yes, right? He could just sleep peacefully and allow himself to be petted, right? But this is not the nature of the lion, right? It's a wild animal. So whose fault would that be? The fault would be of this brahmachari, because he didn't use his intelligence properly, right? And so that brahmachari could tell, okay, I've created that problem for myself because I didn't think properly, right? And so then the second question is even deeper, because first question is referring to external circumstances, but the second question is referring to the wrong kind of mentality which leads us to in creating all the problems for ourselves. And that question is, how do I delude myself? Right? And so in that example, that brahmachari, how did he delude himself? Thinking that, I can pat the cub without any consequences, right? And it was illusion. And so that situation dispelled his illusion. And third question is very simple. What shall I do? Now, how do I use all the new understanding practically, right? And so in the case of that brahmachari would be, remember that wild animal is always wild animal, even if he is small, right? Like that. And so actually, if you think of any circumstances in your life where you felt disturbed, you can always trace it back to something you have done which you should not be doing, or something you have said which you should not be saying, or actually more often, something you haven't done when you should be doing, or something you haven't said in the circumstances when you had to say, right? So like that, it's pretty simple, but it's very powerful. And anyone who applies this formula on oneself can easily learn many valuable lessons from the problematic circumstances. Thank you. Very nice question. Hare Krishna. All right, last question, and then I think we should finish.
You were referring about parrots in your lecture. So I was thinking of special parrot, Sukdev Goswami. Do you want to tell us something about Sukdev Goswami? Srimati Radharani's parrot.
Yeah, we can say so many things, but we have very little time, and I don't want to be cursed by the devotees, by the starving devotees. And Shukadev Goswami is Radharani's parrot who stayed back, and he took that form in order to enlighten the whole world with the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam by explaining it to Maharaj Parikshit. Hare Krishna. Thank you all very much. Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.